And move on to Senate Bill 756. Senator Luetkemeyer. Proceed when ready, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Other member of the committee, for the record, Tony Luetkemeyer, from the 34th Senatorial District, here today to present Senate Bill 756. Last year I filed what was known at that time as Senate Bill 190, which authorized a property tax credit on the primary residence of Missouri seniors that effectively froze their real estate property taxes when they became eligible for Social Security benefits. This offers predictability to seniors, ensuring that increased property taxes will never force them out of their homes. Senate Bill 190 also supported Missouri seniors by eliminating the income tax on Social Security benefits. Missouri, up until that point, was one of only 11 states that taxed Social Security benefits as income. There are now only 9 states remaining in the country that tax Social Security benefits. With the rising cost of consumer goods, that was an important feature of the bill that also put money back in the pockets of Missouri seniors, particularly those on fixed incomes. The focus of Senate Bill 756 today is on the portion of Senate Bill 190 that dealt with the real estate property tax freeze. One of the provisions that is in the bill clarifies that any individual who is age 62 or older, which is the age that you become eligible for Social Security benefits, that they can receive the tax credit that's authorized under Senate Bill 190. There was some confusion after the bill passed as to whether or not someone had to actually qualify for and be eligible to receive Social Security benefits in order to qualify for that tax exemption. The implication being if that were the case, there would be certain categories of employees, particularly public sector employees, firefighters, teachers, who may not qualify for that. And so this bill seeks to clarify that no, anyone age 62 or older, regardless of whether they draw Social Security benefits, is eligible. The second provision that's in there is something that I've been in conversations with a lot of the counties across the state over the interim period about when the tax credit is calculated. This bill makes clear that the tax credit is calculated as of the date that the individual reaches age 62, and the county has also adopted an ordinance implementing Senate Bill 190, making clear that the tax relief granted under the bill is prospective as opposed to being retroactive. The legislature actually can't pass retroactive statutes, but this is just clarifying that issue. And my hope is by passing these two changes, we'll continue to see more and more counties offer this really vital tax relief to Missouri seniors. With that, Mr. Chairman, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Questions for bill sponsor. Senator Beck.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you bringing a fix for this bill here. I know that some counties have implemented it. I don't know exactly how they've done it across the board, but some of them have put income or property tax, like the amount of property tax that they're responsible for in their legislation. Would you be willing to put that into this legislation also, that we have the ability to be able to do that?
Senator, I'm not supportive of that. You know, my belief, we had a similar conversation about the income tax portion of Senate Bill 190 when it passed, whether or not we should have income limits. You know, my view is that if you're a Missouri senior and you're on a fixed income, even if
even if you're a billionaire.
I think that we should not be picking winners and losers when it comes to tax relief. I think it should be across-the-board tax relief, and so I would not support limitations such as the ones that you've outlined.
And there's some of that have already passed at the local government. So what is your calculation? What happens to those ordinances they've done, or how they've decided to roll back that property tax?
So I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that. I think that it's possible that we may see some litigation over that particular issue. Certainly the legislation that we passed last year through the Senate does not expressly authorize that. I think your question, if I'm understanding it correctly, is you're asking if I would be supportive of expressly authorizing counties to put in income limits. That is not something I'd be supportive of. I am aware, generally speaking, that there are counties that have done that. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but there are several counties that have implemented 190 and put limitations on who would qualify based on the value of their primary residence, et cetera.
Yeah, it could be residence or possibly income or whatever. I just was curious if you were open to those conversations, because I think all income tax isn't the same. When you have billionaires that are going to get reap the same benefits from this, and they don't need that tax relief. Whereas we have people that are actually truly good, that are splitting their medications and going to the grocery store and dividing all those things. I am on board with those kinds of tax relief, but to give that to other folks, especially some that have actually been very vocal that property taxes should go to all people, and these are some of our more wealthy, folks that call a lot of shots on policy around the state. So, but I was just curious if you'd be open to, so you wouldn't be open to anything in the committee-wise to leave the committee that way?
I mean, look, the committee can obviously do whatever it wants, but broadly speaking, I would not be in favor of what I would consider to be weakening the bill, which would be excluding from the scope of the protections that we passed last year, excluding people from those benefits under the legislation. That was not my intent when I filed it. My point in filing this legislation this year was to address what I thought were some legitimate concerns about the bill, interpretive issues. It is not to come back and to weaken or gut the piece of legislation that I sponsored and passed last year.
And there's also the issue of, can the county take away from the other political subdivisions that have the ability to be able to tax to raise for our firefighters, our schools, and all those other things. So that's the other part of the issue. I just thought it would make it more palatable as we go, more bipartisan and palatable, if we could do something like that, if we could give each individual county that ability to set that for themselves, what they feel is necessary for their county. The other elected officials that are closer to that local government and know what they need and what they feel like their residents possibly need. So
I would say that, if the issue were to be forced on the floor, I would actually probably take the opposite position. I would probably want to put something in the legislation that expressly prohibits.
And Senator, just so you know, I'm not trying to force anything.
No.
I'm just trying to come to some sort of reasonable bipartisan
I would say
compromise.
that in that, and by the way, this legislation was bipartisan. I think there was one vote against it when it passed the Senate. I think it passed 33-1. And I think maybe the one objection was like a single subject type of objection to the bill. So I view Senate Bill 190 as a bipartisan piece of legislation that was designed to help Missouri seniors make sure that people are not taxed out of their homes and make sure that seniors who are on fixed incomes are being protected.
And Senator, I actually probably would agree with you there, but however, we've seen how it was written and drawn up. It's not working well, and there's some issues and problems with it that are trying to get ironed out. So I'm trying to iron out all the other issues too. So I'm not trying to be adversarial. I'm not trying to force anything. I just was curious what you would be open to.
Yep, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Senator Esslinger.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
Just curious, do you happen to know the number of counties, the percent of counties across our state who have adopted this out of total?
So I was actually looking at that earlier today. I believe it is in excess of a dozen counties.
About a dozen or so?
Yeah. And the counties, and this doesn't really come as a surprise, a lot of the really dramatic increases that we've seen in property tax assessments have tended to occur in the metro areas or in the suburban areas. Mm-hmm. And so it's actually been some of the larger counties that have been the quickest to adopt some of these reforms from Senate Bill 190.
Okay, and are we keeping track of what the reduction in tax is overall as these counties adopt? Or is there any kind of collection that we're looking at to see the impact so that as we go down the road and see opportunities to either up it or reduce it, we want to see the actual impact on various services that we do have, fire, education, whatever it is that's being supported. I would like to know kind of what's happening across our state, just to be informed.
So at least for my part, I'm sure there are some other witnesses that can speak to this as well. Because we are not in a reassessment year, reassessments occur every 2 years, we won't know the fiscal impact of this for the counties that have already gone ahead and adopted Senate Bill 190 until we go through another reassessment cycle, because until that point, there's really nothing to freeze.
Well, for the record, I absolutely support any time that we have an opportunity to reduce tax for our seniors, because I do know that with reassessment or reevaluation that we did have where they couldn't afford to stay in their homes, and that is a tragedy. But I also want to make sure that we don't have unintentional harm to our, public services that we all do rely on, no matter what your tax bracket is. Sure. So thank you.
Senator, I supported your bill last year, and thank you for bringing this clarification. I know one of the issues that we had, and I think that's why you took out the language eligible for Social Security retirement benefits and put in an actual age there, is we have some people that don't have Social Security, like teachers, retired teachers. And I think the intent of your legislation last year was to include them, and obviously they don't qualify for Social Security retirement because they have a different retirement system. And so that's the reason that you deleted that language and tried to make it a little bit more clear that this applies to everyone.
Correct. And we actually, this issue came up last year when I was presenting Senate Bill 190 over in the House. And senators don't say this very often whenever they're over in their House, but I actually welcomed an amendment from the House committee to send it back to the Senate to correct that exact issue. And so I was open to it then. I think because some things made it clear towards the end of session that we perhaps weren't going to have a lot of bills going through the Senate at the end. I think the Speaker made the decision to TAFP that bill because it was one of the only tax relief bills that was really viable at that late stage in the session. But I was open to that change in committee in the House last year, and obviously remain open to it by virtue of filing the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senators Hoskins,
Here.
Esslinger. Here. Beck. Here. Eigel. Here. Fitzwater. Here. Huff. Roberts. We have 5 present.
We do have 5 present. We do have a quorum. Any further questions for Senator Luetkemeyer? Seeing none, just by raise of hands, how many do we have here to testify on Senator Luetkemeyer's bill here today, both for and against? Okay. All right. First up to testify in favor of Senate Bill 756. Please come forward. Thank you. Please state your name and who you're with for the committee and proceed when ready.
With me is Rory O'Sullivan, who's our county counselor, in case you have any legal questions that I can't handle. I'm here to testify in favor of 256 or 756, and we are one of the 12 counties that were mentioned that have passed a bill. We are working right now on a procedure where people can apply for it, and we need to have that procedure in place by March. So we hope that you'll be able to move 756 as quickly as you can in case we need to change anything. What I'm going to talk about here, and the questions I'm going to try to answer is who, what, when, where, and how. We didn't know who was eligible, and we also didn't know what jurisdictions we could actually freeze. Our lawyers saw there were different ways to interpret the language. What we did is send an invitation to all the members of our delegation. I think there was 13. Senator Eigel was there, and I think just about everybody else was. And what we did is simply ask them, what was your intent? And I think it was pretty well unanimous that the intent was this was supposed to apply to anybody 62. At least that's what they thought they were voting for. And it would cover all jurisdictions, not just the county taxes, but the school districts and other political subdivisions. So basically, we went back, and that's how we drafted the bill, and that's how it was passed. And I hope that you will clarify in such a way that makes that clear. So 62 is what we think it should be. We think it should apply to not only the county taxes, but to all taxes. When does it go into effect? I think Senator Luetkemeyer's already made it clear he wants to make sure nobody can read this as retroactive, and we agree on that particular point. So it's August 23, basically. There's some other questions here. What if the tax bill goes down? As you know, I mean, the COVID did some crazy things to the housing market, to the used car market. Next year, we're going to go ahead and reassess. There's going to be a reassessment. And I don't think usually taxes always go up. I don't think it's impossible that actually tax bills could go down. Does the bill allow people then to reapply and get their new lower tax bill frozen? Or can they only get it done once? The good thing about this bill, I guess it's not, if there's going to be a time to freeze taxes, this year is a good time because everything did go up so much. But I'm hopeful that could actually go down. So I think the bill needs to deal with that in case that would happen. Now, the other thing is, what if new jurisdictions come in? Do you have to reapply to be subject to their tax? We're, the last question is how? The bill really doesn't set up a procedure. We have, in our ordinance, set up a procedure in which people will have to apply, and we are now working on applications that people can file beginning on March 1st. And again, we'll be glad to send you a copy of that if you want to include our procedure, or again, you can leave it up each jurisdiction how they want to do that. But we want people to be able to apply as of March 1st. We want, there's things in this, obviously, that they have to show are true before they are eligible. And then after they do it 1 year, we don't want them to have to reapply every year. We want a simpler form that simply says, hey, nothing's changed, okay, in which case they will continue to enjoy the same freeze that they had earlier. I think those are the main issues, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Eigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Steve. It was good to see you. I just wanted to say thank you to you and the other county council members that I thought showed great leadership, being proactive about trying to answer these questions. I thought it was very productive. I like the path that the county took forward and adopted it, so thank you for your efforts. And you mentioned, are you optimistic that our taxes are going to go down next year in the county? Because I saw my personal property tax and my regular property tax bills. They didn't go down this year, I can tell you that.
Well, used cars in our county, as you know, personal property, this was a real issue, and I think the average used car went up 28%. Now,
So the average used car went up 28%?
I don't think it's going to stay there. I think it's going to come down at least for that. On housing values, it just seems to me they have gone way high.
Well, I will.
I think they may come down.
Okay.
Maybe I'm too optimistic.
If they don't, can I call you?
If they don't, you can call a real estate person and ask them why they're not.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Any further
Chairman,
questions?
I have one other issue just to
Proceed.
ask you to consider. The way I read this, it doesn't allow people to go ahead and pick what age or what property is eligible. And as you know, some jurisdictions in St. Louis region have adopted bills in which they've had a higher age and a limit on the value of the property. If that's what you want them to be able to do, I think you need to make that clear. Because, the Constitution, Article 10, Section 3 says you can't, that we can't create new classes. You create the class. The class is people over 62. So to create a new class, a smaller class of people over 67, I'm not sure a judge is going to buy that. So if you want them to be able to do that, I think you need to make it clear that they can. And again, the class is anybody who has a homestead. It's not, and they're creating a new class, everybody has a homestead worth less than $500,000. Again, that's a policy. You all need to decide what you want. If you want them to do that, fine. I think you need to write it differently than Senate Bill 190. And if you don't, I think you need to clarify that that's not what you had in mind.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up to testify in favor of Senate Bill 756. Good afternoon, Mr. Isett.
Mr. Chairman,
Proceed when ready.
thank you very much. My name is Alan Isett. I'm Collector of Revenue for Greene County, and I am here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 756. Just to give a brief background, the Missouri Association of Counties, MAC, put together a task force to look at some of the concerns that the organization and the counties had on Senate Bill 190, and I had the opportunity to chair that task force and submitted the report. Overall, our concern, which I'd like to thank Senator Luetkemeyer, has been addressed, is the clarity of the bill so that it's very clear on is it retroactive or not, and also so that the counties, the 114 counties, are those that actually implement the bill, so that we, as counties, implement it consistently. For obvious reasons, we don't want County A doing it from A to Z and County B doing it from Z to A. So those are our significant concerns, so that as we implement the bill, we do so, as I said, consistently. So I'd like to, again, thank Senator Luetkemeyer for introducing 756, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Esslinger.
You know, I had a lot of my county officials calling me because, you know, obviously there's a lot of people had questions. And one of the things that kept coming up was that they were concerned that they were not able to take action because they were afraid of future litigation against them, like they hadn't handled this correctly, and puts the commissioners, your county officials, into a very awkward situation. They just want to do what is by law accurate. So has there been any lawsuits or anything filed that you are aware of? I don't know of any. Just a question.
No, to my knowledge, no lawsuits have been filed, in that no counties, to my knowledge, have actually implemented it. For example,
Okay,
Greene
sure.
County Commission passed it, I believe, August 28th, and said becomes effective January 1st. And obviously, I have taxpayers calling my office, when am I going to get my credit? And I say, I'm waiting for the legislature to see if there are other clarifications made so that Greene County, Crystal County, Stone County, Webster, all the counties, 114, do it as consistently as possible. So I think until the implementation actually occurs and someone is harmed, I don't foresee a lawsuit being filed.
Okay.
Could
And
be wrong.
I didn't think there actually was that much danger of it, but that was a concern that was among my 7 county officials for sure. So.
Yep. Yes,
Thank
Senator.
you.
Thank you, Senator.
Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up, testify in favor of Senate Bill 756. And make sure everyone leaves a witness form as well. Proceed when ready.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Dennis Ganal. I'm a retired professor. I am the founder and a managing director for a group called Tax Relief Now. We supported this bill throughout the entire last session, and we hope we had some impact on it getting past 187 to 3. I've worked with, we're a long-standing organization. About 6,000 people in the state of Missouri now are a member of our network. They receive regular emails. We have a long history, actually. In 2008, we worked with Senator Pro Tem Mike Gibbons to pass Senate Bill 711. We also worked with U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt to get the county assessor in St. Louis to become an elected position instead of an appointed position. We refired back up here in the last couple of years because the property taxes have just gone crazy again, and we decided to focus on senior tax relief. I've worked with almost 40 counties in Missouri since SB 190 has passed. I can give you a report on the status of all those counties if you're interested. Actually, 11 have been passed. We're in the process. We probably have 7 or 8 now in petition process. And so I've talked with all of our volunteers across the state and understand all their situations. What I brought today is a compilation of recommendations. First of all, I would like to say I think the bill is very clear if your goal is to give senior tax relief. I think it's a very clear bill. The only time that there's confusion or chaos is when people don't want to give seniors tax relief. And then, you can take 2 people and put them in a room and they're going to argue, I promise you. And that's what's been created here in the county situation. There are just counties that do not want to give senior tax relief. And so that's where the confusion stems from. But we applaud Senator Luetkemeyer. So I've given each of you a list of our recommendations based on the 40 counties that we're working with, feedback that we're getting from the counties. I've also had several discussions and met on the phone with Alan Isett when he was chairing the task force for the Missouri Association of Counties. And I believe Alan and I have agreed on all of these points. So first one is a clarification. This is for seniors. that are 85 years old, and they wanted to know, well, gosh darn, this bill doesn't apply retroactively, does it? And I just think that's something that you might want to put into the bill, you know, to let people know that we'll know if you're 85, it's not going to go back to the tax rate when you were 62. Clarification on which taxes are being frozen. That's on line 2526 in Senate Bill 756. We've making some recommendations as to the type of language that you might want to insert there to ensure that all of the tax authorities, that all of those taxes are frozen. This is the issue in Texas County. I know that that might be what you're referring to right now, that they have frozen, just like St. Louis City did. They've only frozen their portion of that property tax as opposed to freezing all of the property taxes. And so, you know, that's an issue in those counties and that city. A clarification to Senator Beck's question is clarification on means testing. We agree that the bill did not intend to have means testing of any sort. There have been several counties. Most prominent would be Jackson County, which is being sued by the Attorney General now for their practices on assessment. And St. Louis County have both arbitrarily set up an amount of the home value is like $550,000. I think the city put an earnings limit on. You can't earn so much, you know, this amount more. Last year, we brought in economics and finance professors to testify at committees. They weren't available to come in today as to why means testing doesn't work. A very specific example today would be, let's say that my home assessed at $425,000 or $475,000 this past year. It didn't, but let's say that it did. And I live in St. Louis County, and then the next year the assessor has actually an incentive to increase my property tax assessment to higher than $550, because when they do, my taxes are going to kick back in to that rate. So you could be in, and you know, take a look at what you paid for your house, and take a look at what they're appraising the value of your house is now. Put that over the life of a senior. So a senior is going to get their home free property taxes frozen at 62. Imagine at 75, all of a sudden, the home is now worth $550,000, which is not out of hand. I mean, we're seeing in St. Louis County 50 and 75% value increases this past year, especially to lower income people, right? So we can talk about the billionaire in the state that's going to get this, but you know, he's a one person. And so what we really need to be concentrating here on is now the 94, 95% of the people that live well beyond these means. So I'd say we move it forward, but there is some language in here to clarify that. There's also a clarification on the titling of a senior's property. We wanted to make sure that people would have their property included if the property was put into a trust that they would still be able to receive this tax freeze. I think St. Charles did the most excellent example. I mean, we've got copies of all the bills that have been passed. St. Charles did an excellent job. So did Camden, so did Miller and Laclede, but St. Charles really is excellent. And one of the things that became apparent to me when I went to St. Charles' meeting when they were passing this bill was the fact that, you know, the county needs control of how to put it into effect. You go to some counties like Texas where there's 40,000 people, you know, they don't have a staff of X number, so they need to be able to control the administrative processes to put this, to get this implemented easily for them. And at the same time, we think that, I would like to agree here with Mr. Aylman, that the reapplication process should be easy. So, you know, it's like personal property taxes. You get your bill this past year in St. Louis County. Do you still own that house? Are you still own that car? You still own that car? Okay, here's your taxes. So it should be that easy to reapply. And the last thing that we think needs to be addressed, because we've got this in a county now, I won't mention the county, but the county is, the bill provides for people to be able to sign a petition and get a petition implemented to implement this bill. And what's happened in this county is the county passed the barest minimum benefit to seniors. They only froze the county portion of the tax. And then when the citizens presented 900 signatures, when only 500 were required, the county clerk came and said, we're not going to allow this election. And they're not going to allow this election because, well, we've already passed it, so it's a moot point. We think that this is not a moot point for several reasons. One reason being the fact that a people's vote is greater than the county vote. And so that if the people vote on passing this ordinance, then only the people can vote it down, right? And so, but if the county passes this ordinance, then the county in 2 years can say, well, we're not going to do this anymore. So we think that language needs to be into this ordinance which states that it's not a question of either or. Citizens always have the right for a referendum, and citizens always have a right to put together a petition to petition their government. So for this, and we're pursuing it with the Attorney General, and we're pursuing it with the Secretary of State right now. But it seems like a long-winded, lots of effort for an interim county clerk to say, no, you can't, we're not going to put this election together anymore.
Thank you for your testimony. We're going to have to move on a little bit. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to testify. We have 2 other bills as well. Any questions for this witness? No. Thank you. And you do bring up some great points, and we have provided your written testimony to everyone in the committee. Thank you. Anyone else to testify in favor of Senate Bill 756?
Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Bev Elan with the Warren County Republican Committee, and going on record saying we are in support of this. We're working with our county commission and are happy to have these couple things cleared up. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anyone else here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 756? Seeing none, anyone here to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 756? Opposition. Anyone here to testify for informational purposes only for Senate Bill 756? Please state your name and who you're with and proceed when ready.
Good afternoon. I'm Fire Chief Skip Stevens, Cottleville Fire District, testifying on behalf of Cottleville Fire Protection District for informational purposes only. We are not opposed to the idea of helping out senior citizens, that's for sure. We are also not opposed to cleaning up the language from Senate Bill 190 from last session. But it seems as though Senate Bill 756 does not go far enough in regard to clarifying and fixing some of the issues created by Senate Bill 190. First, Senate Bill 190, now known as State Statute 137-1050, does not clearly state whether these tax credits are applicable to fire protection districts and other political subdivisions that reside within the county that is authorizing the tax credits. Our interpretation of this language is that the law does not apply to political subdivisions other than the counties. If the intent, as Mr. Ellman referred to earlier, is to include all political subdivisions, then the law should explicitly state as much. Otherwise, it should state that the law only applies to county taxes. I encourage you all not to leave that interpretation up to each county. Make it clear. The second item that I want to address is the last section, Section 4 of Statute 137-1050, which was added through last session's Senate Bill 190. It reads, for the purposes of calculating property tax levies pursuant to 137-073, the total amount of credits authorized by a county pursuant to this section shall be considered tax revenue as such term is defined in 137-073, actually received by the county. If you do apply this law to fire protection districts, this section in particular is hurtful in regard to our funding and is hurtful to public service. It is also potentially not in alignment with Hancock. Tax rate calculations are, according to Hancock, based on revenue and not on tax credits, and not based on revenue that is actually not received. Think about it this way. If there's somebody in your church, somebody in your community that's having a hard time, a family or whatever, and you want to help them out. In this case, we've decided we want to help out senior citizens, and that's great. So what you do in the church is you pass the hat, and everybody chips in. But because of Section 4 of this law of 137-1050, the only people putting in the hat is the fire districts, the ambulance districts, and the other political subdivisions, instead of that being spread across the community. So we hold the opinion that Senate Bill 756 is definitely needed. There definitely needs to be a cleanup of Senate Bill 190 from last session. The issues with 137-1050 deserve a more comprehensive revision to Senate Bill 190 than only to clarify the age of eligibility. And so we would like to see these other issues addressed. I would be happy to help in any way possible to take care of our senior citizens and help develop any language that could be well understood and evenly interpreted across the state. That completes my testimony.
Any questions for this witness? Senator Eigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Skip. Always good to see you. Did I correct in understanding that if explicit language was put into this bill that specified it will cover all political subdivisions, that your organization would be in opposition to it?
Say that again, Senator.
If language was explicitly put into this bill that said that the measures in this bill will cover all political subdivisions, which means that the tax cut would apply to your political subdivision, am I correct in assuming that you would then come out in opposition to it?
You are not correct. I think that would be a false assumption.
Oh, so you would support a tax cut for seniors in your district?
We will take a look at any Senate substitutes or any other versions of this bill and evaluate our position based on that language.
Interesting. Now, you've always said in the past that the only way you would support any reductions in revenue, you said actually in that chair on other bills, would be if there was a corresponding increase elsewhere in revenues. But the scenario I'm giving you would very clearly mean a cut to certain revenue. So I'm just curious why you're suddenly hesitant to say that you would oppose such a tax cut, in this case, applying that same standard.
I'm not saying we would oppose or we wouldn't oppose. I'm just saying sitting here today, I'm testifying on what's in front of me, and in some other version would be irresponsible of me to give a position without this version ever even being created.
Well, right now, the county has decided that it does actually apply to all political subdivisions in St. Charles County. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So what is your expected loss in revenue as a result of this going into effect?
There's so many variables, unknown variables, that even the best financial experts that I've spoken to.
So you don't know?
No. Yeah, that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
So what I'm getting to is nobody knows.
So is it irresponsible for you to come out and support or opposition when you actually haven't done the research to actually find out and determine what the cost of this bill actually is?
Yeah, that's why I'm speaking for informational purposes only, sir.
What's your operating budget for Cottleville Fire for this year?
I don't have my financial records, and I was not prepared to testify on the budget or other finances.
Skip, you're the fire chief.
I
What's
am.
your budget for this year?
I'm not going to give an incorrect number.
You don't know?
No, I'm not saying I don't know.
Do you know what your number was for last year?
Please, Senator, tell me how this is relevant to this.
It's relevant because you're making a testimony on a bill that will affect your finances, and you're telling me that you're taking a position on possible legislation, and you don't even know what your annual budget is for the Cottleville Fire Department. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. What I'm telling you, sir, is we are not taking a position.
Okay.
I am here.
What is your budget? What is the operating budget for the Cottleville Fire Department? I mean, I think that every person in St. Charles would want to know that their fire chief is coming all the way to Jefferson City on taxpayer money, and yet can't answer a simple question about what his budget is. What is your budget for Cottleville Fire for 2024?
I can answer. Mr. Chairman, do you feel as though this line of questioning is relevant to the testimony and to this bill?
I'm going to let Senator Eigel proceed.
Yep.
The annual budget is in the area of $12 million.
It's in the area, and is that more or less than it was last year?
It's more.
Has there ever been a fiscal year in which you've had as much money as you have right now?
I don't have the historical budgetary data for the entirety of the fire protection district. My assumption would be no.
I enjoy this little back and forth, but the spoiler here is that you've never had this much money. You've never had as much money, even adjusted for inflation, than you have right now in your district. And I find it interesting and quite frankly insulting that you describe that what we ought to do is just pass the hat. Well, it so happens that right now the hat is being passed to every person that represents the Cottleville Fire Department, every person in my county, every single one. In fact, they're passing the hat so much, they've never put more into that hat than they're putting right now. And to have any taxing jurisdiction come forward and try to engender sympathy before this committee, nervous about giving even a remote small break in the tax burden that's being placed upon this, and then to have a little back and forth where you're afraid because you know how terrible it looks publicly when folks realize that you've never had more of their money, I think is very frustrating to me, Skip. It's very frustrating. And so I also don't understand, and I'd just like to get clarity. Why are you afraid to say that you would oppose this tax cut if we specify all taxing jurisdictions? Because you've opposed any tax cut that would threaten your revenues, regardless of who it may or may not help. Why are you hesitant?
I think it would be irresponsible to not analyze any future version of this legislation or other, and to sit here and just try to imagine what it might be with any particular change. And so what I want to point out is that the items that I'm bringing to light to this committee are relevant, and they're important, and they affect our funding. Now, whether Senator Eigel's position of perhaps we have too much funding is not relevant to the conversation. The Cottleville Fire District taxes legally based upon the will of the people, based upon the tax levy that was passed by the residents of the district.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hi. This will be a little bit friendlier, so thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
And make sure you please tell the folks, everybody that's under your command, thank you for their service when you go back. That's from me personally.
Thank you, Senator.
So I just want to stress, and you came up for information only, and maybe I can cut more to the chase. You feel that, first off, you're not the boss of the Cottleville Fire District, correct?
I'm the chief.
You're the chief, but do you have three board members?
We have 5.
5 board members, are they elected?
That's right.
They're elected by the local community to serve in
That's
that
right.
capacity to decide what's best for the Cottleville Fire District.
Yes, sir.
And they've decided what the taxes should look like in that area. And I'm assuming if they raise them too high, they would get voted down. And I'm assuming if the public likes it, they pass them. Correct?
That's the way it works.
And
Yes, sir.
that's how your budget comes about.
That's right.
Right. Now the question was asked: do you have more money than you've ever had? My question to you also would be: are your expenses more than they've ever been?
100%.
Yeah. Okay. So, so everything's relative to what it is. It's not just about what's coming at you. I think I know what you're trying to get at is you don't feel like it's fair for the county to decide what's best for your fire district when you have 5 elected board members that have decided what they want to do to be able to keep the citizens of that community safe.
I think that's a true statement, but I also want to point out that I think it should be clear, the law should be clear. If my county executive has to go to the legislators and say, what was your intent, then the language is not clear.
So I personally think, and maybe I'm wrong here, I personally think that every political subdivision should have that ability to decide whether they want to do this or not. Because there's elected bodies, whether they're school district 7 or 5 in your case for the board. In St. Louis County, I think it's 3 on fire boards. On some of them, maybe there's 5. I don't know. Some of
Yeah,
them
we're a little different with
a
5.
little different, yeah. But I mean, you would be okay with that scenario too, where if you had that ability to be able to set that parameters yourself?
Absolutely, and I do believe, so that's, as I mentioned in my read, that's our interpretation based on the language in the law, which says any county that is authorized to impose a tax may provide tax credits. Well, St. Charles County, for example, is authorized to impose a tax, but the question is, are they authorized to impose the tax from the political subdivisions?
And I know that's been an argument going forward, and I think it's been mentioned here earlier. In my view, that is the view that if St. Louis County wants to reduce their tax, give their tax credit, like as you said, they should do that. I don't really think that they should be able to do that for all political subdivisions, so that's kind of my view of it, because I think it's unconstitutional to be able to set what other taxing jurisdictions within their legal rights are able to do. And so I understand what you're saying, and that's why I understand why you came in for information only. I'm in favor of this. I think there should be some parameters around it. I think there should be some safeguards around it, because as we've seen, the way it was implemented and written the first time around, it wasn't right, because we're back here doing it again. So we don't want to come back another session and address this again. So thank you again for your service, and thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Any further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
You're welcome.
Anyone else here to testify for informational purposes only for Senate Bill 756? Seeing none. Oh, we have one. We are a little bit of a time crunch. We've got two more bills to hear, so if you could keep your comments brief, and I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Proceed when ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. My name is Arnie C. Acedino, State Public Advocate. I filled my form online last night. Just a thing here for the committee to take into consideration. 50%, over 50% of in income into a Missouri household goes to some form of a tax or a fee at the federal, the state, the county, and the local level, and especially the special district level. In most cases, Missourians pay 53% of their income to some form of a fee or a tax. And so Missourians don't start paying themselves until July 15th of every year. And taxes are really getting out of control, and we need to restructure our tax structure all the way from the federal level down to the local level. In terms of this bill, 756, senior citizens do need some type of concessions and tax break. And so I just wanted to bring it to your consideration that when people retire or when people are on a fixed income, with the raising inflation, with raising utility costs, we've had a record-breaking in St. Charles County and across the state of personal property and real estate taxes, the assessments, and it's borne by senior citizens on fixed incomes and people that have general revenue constraints. And so I want you to keep that in consideration with this bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here to testify for informational purposes only for Senate Bill 756? Seeing none, that concludes testimony on Senate Bill 756. The next two bills are identical. Senate Bill 733 by Senator Eigel and Senate Bill 725 by myself, Senator Hoskins. So we will hear them together and take testimony on both bills at the same time. If I could have a raise of hands of how many people would like to testify on these next two bills. So, okay, 5 or 6. Okay. We just want to be mindful of time because I think there is a committee meeting in here after this one. So I'm going to turn it over to the Vice Chair, Senator Esslinger.
What time is the next committee starting? Okay, we're going to say 2:30. We're getting out here, we're at least 30 minutes. As mentioned by our chair, we have Senate Bill 733 by Senator Eigel, as well as Senate Bill 725 by Senator Hoskins. These are identical bills relating to personal property taxes, and so either of you can start first. Up to you.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. State Senator Bill Eigel, Senator Denny Hoskins from the 23rd and 21st districts, respectively. And my pleasure to introduce to you Senate Bill 733, 725, that having to do with personal property taxes. The genesis of these bills is being driven by the fact that the tax burden in the state is too high. In fact, not only is it too high, I can accurately say that adjusted for inflation, to deal with the idea of raising costs, adjusted for inflation. Missourians today have never sent more of their hard-earned treasure to government. The federal government certainly, but also the state and the local government as well. And yet, I'm very hard-pressed to find anyone that believes that we're getting more for that record amount of sacrifice from government in terms of outcomes, measurable outcomes, than we've ever had before in our history. Now, Senate Bill 733 and 725 in particular would slowly lower the assessment rate on personal property tax so that, very candidly, you won't have to pay rent to the government every December 1st for the crime of owning a car in the state of Missouri. The way it would do it is very specific. One, as revenues go up locally, it would be offset by cuts to personal property tax, which would slowly be phased down as the personal property assessment rate was lower. And secondly, each local community who I know have expressed concerns about the possibility of losing revenues, whether they're revenues that are increases in future revenues or real loss in day, would be eligible for a reimbursement by the state for any revenues that they are out as a result of removing personal property tax. Now, the time to get rid of a tax like personal property tax and be prepared as a state to reimburse local areas for any such losses in revenues, we've never been in better shape before. Our budget has never been as big as it is right now. We've more than doubled state spending and have seen over the past couple of years record surpluses in state coffers. So this provides an enormous amount of protection for local districts while at the same time ensuring that we will join 29 other states in not hammering working and middle income class households every December 1st in the form of personal property tax. With that, Madam Chairwoman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator Eigel. And Senator Hoskins, comment?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. For the record, State Senator Denny Hoskins here, representing the 21st Senatorial District, here today to present Senate Bill 725 as well as Senator Eigel's Senate Bill 733. When I go across my district and talk to people, talk to folks back home, they're mad. They're upset that they're paying higher personal property taxes this year on their 2010 Ford F-150 pickup truck than they did 5 years ago, and they don't believe that they're seeing any extra benefit from paying those higher personal property taxes. We pay a lot of taxes into the state of Missouri, whether it's income tax, gas tax, sales tax, personal property tax, real estate tax. And we need to give some of that money back to our constituents, give some of that money back to the folks back home so they can make decisions on what they would like to do with their money, whether that's save more for retirement, help pay for their kids' college education, or purchase a new home, purchase a different car, whatever they want to do with their money. But right now, the tax burden is enormous in the state of Missouri, and reducing personal property taxes and hopefully eliminating them will help eliminate that burden. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions from the committee? Senator Beck.
Just a couple questions, friendly ones. This is all personal property, planes, boats.
Yes, all personal property.
So if you own a plane or a jet or whatever, this would reduce that.
That's correct.
And you mentioned, but I didn't see it in the fiscal note, Senator Eigel, that you said something with the state taking over that cost. Did you just say that? But that's not in this bill?
It is. So
where's that? 'Cause, I mean, there's no fiscal note on it, so I'm curious.
there is, so subject to appropriations, a political subdivision that receives less than the allowable amount shall be eligible for reimbursement from the state in an amount equal to that. So you can, under this version of the bill, get reimbursed for any lost revenues. Now, it's important to point out that we're only cutting from future increases. So there should be, even in the short, immediate term, there's not going to be a loss to the local budgets because we're only cutting after we've seen an increase. Similar to what we did with Senate Bill 509, when we were cutting income taxes. You have to actually see an increase before you can get a cut. But this puts us on a path to completely ratchet out all personal property tax in the state.
So, I mean, and it says subject to appropriations, but what if we put like a shall in there that the state would whatever the losses would be, the state shall do that? Would you be interested in something of that nature instead of subject to appropriations?
The intention is to reimburse the state, so I certainly would be open to that.
Okay,
or
thanks.
my
Thank you.
intention is to reimburse the local area. So, and I think that, by the way, Senator, that what I'm describing to you is a little bit changed, a little bit differently from what I think we talked about last year.
No, 100%, and we had good conversations
Yes.
on the floor, more than I wanted to, but...
we always have good conversations.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, yeah, well, I look forward to having more conversations with you as we go forward.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I guess not from the committee. So I guess now we will move on to if we have anybody who would like to testify in favor of. And I know that we have to give up this room, I believe. I may be mistaken, but I believe we have to give up the room. So we will only have testimony for a certain amount of time, let's say 3 minutes, for those who would like to testify. So now, if anybody would like to testify in favor of Senate Bill 733 or Senate Bill 725, please come forward. Seeing none. Do we have anybody who would like to testify in opposition to? Please come forward. Please state your name. Make sure that we have a witness or test of, what do you call that? Test of your sheets filled out.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and the members of the committee. We appreciate the time that you've given us today. We are collectively representing some of the first responders of the community this year, or this session. My name is Kelly Cope. I'm the Chief of St. Charles County Ambulance District.
Good afternoon. My name is Tom Vineyard. I'm the Fire Chief with O'Fallon Fire Protection District, and I also represent the Missouri Association of Career Fire Districts.
Hello again. Fire Chief Skip Stevens, Cottleville Fire District.
So we understand you have short time, and we'll
Short
keep
time.
it brief. Our biggest concern is related to the implementation of the bill as it stands, and that the difficulty will be in association to how to manage through the changes in the funding that will be associated to this.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. Do we have any questions for these witnesses? All right, seeing none. I think that's
Thank
it.
you very
Thank you
much.
so much for
Appreciate
your
your time.
time. Be sure we fill out a form. Thank you. Do we have any other that would like to testify in opposition to either Senate Bill 733 or Senate Bill 725? Please come forward at this time. Thank you. Please state your name and who you represent.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm Nancy Pennington. I'm with the Missouri Association of County Developmental Disability Services. That's the state association of the SB40 boards in the state. As I believe you all know, the SB40 boards are funded strictly by property tax levy. So right now, our funds are used for services for people with developmental disabilities throughout the state. We're concerned about any cut to those funding revenues. I do definitely appreciate that you guys have added language about reimbursing for any loss. We are concerned about the subject to appropriations. As you know, right now the DD system is not fully funded and there are still people in crisis. And we work hard with the SB40 boards to do what we can as well to try and address some of those needs in partnership with the Department of Mental Health. Again, it's just the concern about the lack of funding. Our revenues, 20% of our revenues currently come from personal property tax. So long as there's a way to make up those revenues and that people get the services that they need, I can guess, I'm going to go ahead and guess that we would be in favor of transitioning. But we are worried about any loss of growth that may happen as the needs for services increase and the prevalence of things such as autism continue to grow. So I'll just stop there. I know we're short on time. So.
Appreciate that. Thank you so very much. Do we have any questions from the committee for this witness? So our chairman has, because we have two bills here,
Correct.
then Senator Eigel will be able to ask a question in regards to Senator Hoskins' bill for this witness.
Right.
Proceed.
So, thank you. Just a quick comment and a quick question. First of all, how much, you said it was 20% of your budget. How much was that?
On average, it's 20% of the $115 million. So that would be roughly, what, $23 million?
Yeah, 23 million? Okay, 23 million. I've always felt that the conversation about personal property tax is not a conversation about whether or not the people of this state want to and should fund those services that affect the most vulnerable among us. I've always said instead that it is a conversation about whether or not charging people rent for their cars every December 1st is the right way to do it. And so, kind of to your point, you're not necessarily concerned that we would transition this to a different revenue, because we've specified in the bill that the state would basically be taking on, shouldering that burden from the record amount of revenues that we're getting at the state level. Your concern is just that the revenue remains whole. So whether it came from a local personal property tax or it came from a reimbursement from the state, you're actually neutral on that as long as the amount is the same.
Yeah, I believe that we would be based on conversations that we have.
Okay.
The point to make, again, when you talk about charging rent on vehicles, which I always dislike that term, because the voters have voted in each of these counties, 88 counties plus the city of St. Louis, to go ahead and impose this property tax on themselves for this particular purpose. So I think that they've chosen to pay the rent of their vehicles to provide services to people in their communities, using your phrase.
Yeah, I have consistently found that anyone representing one of these taxing jurisdictions don't like it when I put it quite that way, because I think how I'm putting it in that case represents a lot of the Missourians that are paying the tax. However, that's not the purpose to get into that conversation here at the hearing, so thank you for your testimony.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any further questions from the committee for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Any other who would like to testify in opposition to? Begin when ready.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinoff, State Public Advocate. I filled out my form online last night. And this is a really difficult subject. No one in Missouri enjoys personal property tax. No one enjoys taking a day off of out of their schedule to go and get a safety inspection, emissions inspection, pay their personal property taxes, and license their vehicle. It's a pain, and personal property tax is a pain. But coming to the table without full solutions to ensure that all political subdivisions across the state will not be injured or hurt in any way should be the top priority. In my opinion, this is bullying of the Senate and the State General Assembly. It's political theater and showboating. You know, this person who sponsored this bill, one of the sponsors, is running for statewide office. I may be running for statewide office as well. These have ramifications. If you look at St. Charles County, the major school districts in our county, Fort Zumwalt School District, Francis Howell School District, Wentzville School District, they all have $300 million budgets. This will have a grave concern about our educational value, providing quality education, paying staff what they deserve, and paying the needed instructional materials and supplies. You're looking at a decrease, if this goes through between now and 2073, of 20 to 33% of all special districts' budgets across Missouri. So it could be up to $100 million, or 1/3 of some of these districts' budgets. Now, there's ramifications, and there's not 100% assurances that the appropriations will be there. As you all know, in fiscal year 2024, this fiscal year, which the appropriations gets kicked off, the Appropriation Committee hearings get kicked off tomorrow, there is a shortage of a certain percentage. I can't quote it off the top of my head, but I believe it's 1.6% less revenues than we have had in fiscal year 2023. Looking forward, no one has a crystal ball. And so there are no assurances in this legislation that will appropriate the necessary and the mandatory funds to support these special functioning local districts. There will be legal challenges that will cost the state hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I need to interrupt and let you know you have about 1 minute left to testify. Thank you.
There will be legal challenges across the state that will cost the state hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, and it will create an all-out war between local special political subdivisions and the state of Missouri. Again, this is not the proper legislation. We've gone through this now the 3rd year in a row. No one likes personal property tax, but if you're not going to have apples for apples, take away the personal property tax and replace 100% legitimate, guaranteed funding to special districts, I am opposed to both Senate Bill 725 and Senate Bill 733. Missourians come first and not showboating in political theater. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions from the committee for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to testify in opposition to? As a reminder, sir, we have a 3-minute little warning here.
Thank you for not making it 30 seconds like David Pierce. Autophagy on behalf of Missouri NEA, we have forms in opposition to both of the bills. Be very brief. We have the similar concern that you are, in this case, removing a substantial amount of the local assessed value for a subdivision. There is, in this version, language that talks about subject to appropriations, that there could be some kind of a state compensation. The state's kind of been here before, done that. In 2006, I believe, it was State Senator Chuck Gross who tried to address the senior citizen property tax issue with a tax credit. The intention being that it would essentially be implemented when the state appropriated money to a reimbursement fund. And that thing died on the vine because of a failure to appropriate. Its timing was obviously bad because 2 years down the road you had the Great Recession. Things like that happen to state revenues. You don't print money. You know, your budget is subject to the effects on the economy, on the economic cycles. And so there's quite a legitimate possibility that going forward, the same sort of thing will happen to that good intentioned property tax credit will happen to this. And now you'll have jurisdictions wondering, but unlike the logic there where that didn't happen, those reductions didn't take place unless there were appropriations, this happens, and then the appropriation either is or isn't there, but the local tax cut happens. I'll also point out, if you look at the most recent data, personal property tax comprises up to 43.81%. That's the highest figure for any county. That's Sullivan County. So it's a substantial amount of the property tax revenue for some of our jurisdictions. What this bill is basically saying is, as you see real property growth, you're not going to see any net increase in your revenues for some period of reassessment cycles. For St. Charles County, they'll probably burn through what their...
Excuse me, you have a 1 minute warning.
They'll probably burn through their personal property tax portion within 3 cycles. A place like Sullivan County probably will be flatlined in local revenues for decades. So it's going to have a different impact. There's also a ton of kind of underlying details that are not clear about this. It says the true value in money is one thing. On a per political subdivision basis within a county, which might create issues for not having the same thing within a whole county. And actually the Constitution expects that it is the same percentage within a class for every county across the state. So there are some other details that probably this committee and the Senate needs to work through before we move something on this. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Senator Beck.
And as I was reading through that, that's what I was looking at.
It's kind of a wink where one section it says, for the purposes of the Constitution, it's actually this, when actually it's this.
So when the senator mentioned this 2010 Ford F-150, that'll be levied at different taxes in different counties.
Correct. Potentially, the way I'm reading the bill, it would be done on a political subdivision basis. So it could actually be different within counties, because there's adjustments for each political subdivision as they see real property growth.
Okay. And so in a rural area, chances are that vehicle would be taxed at a higher rate than it would be in probably some of our metropolitan areas as real estate goes up.
As the time goes on, because like I said, St. Charles County, their real property tax growth will burn through the value of their personal property pretty quickly, whereas in these other counties it could take decades. So they wouldn't see the change as quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for this witness?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Seeing none, thank you. Do we have any other folks who would like to testify in opposition to? Seeing none, do we have anyone who would like to testify for informational purposes only? Well, hello. Love seeing my constituents. Please state your name and who you're representing.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Daniel Franks. I'm the Howell County Assessor. I've been in that position for 33 years now. And I will tell you that taxes are a pain. I know it very well. But there are better ways to address our issue than piecemealing and doing some assessment caps that have a short-term effect and may have unintended consequences, a total review of our entire property tax policy and structure needs to be performed in our state. It hasn't been done since reassessment was ordered in '79. So one of the things I would respectfully suggest is that the committee, the senators, the House members go back and look at the work that was done from 1980 through 1985 to put reassessment in place. Because since that time, since 1985, we've allowed levy setting policy to be amended inappropriately. We've also allowed assessment policy to be amended inappropriately. So instead of creating a more a more progressive tax system, we created a regressive, where lower valued properties are assessed at a higher rate than the upper valued properties. We need to fix that, because it's all about putting equity in the system. And I don't know of an assessor in the state that wouldn't support that. So, and we're here to help.
That's right.
We're here to bring some solutions.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Be careful going home. Do we have anybody else who would like to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none. With that, I don't see any more, let's see, how's it supposed to, no further business is coming before the committee. I do appreciate your all's patience and staying within the time limit. I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Received a second. I have a second. We are adjourned.